Chapter 5084 Detoxification Pill divided into 6. Just as Lan Dimeo was thinking about it, the fragrance of medicinal herbs spread out from the alchemy furnace. Lan Dimeo was stunned. Those medicinal herbs had fused into the medicinal juice so quickly? Normally, wouldn't it take 15 minutes to fuse into the medicinal juice? How did she do it? Lan Dimeo was faintly looking forward to it. Perhaps this troublemaker really knew how to refine pills. Even if she couldn't refine a detoxification pill divided into 6, she could refine a few. At least she could save the Lan family's lives. At this moment, Lan Dimeo saw Yun Chujio lift the lid of the pill furnace and throw a few medicinal herbs into it. Lan Dimeo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It seemed that he was overthinking. This troublemaker didn't know how to refine pills at all. Who didn't know that lifting the lid of the pill furnace was a big taboo when refining pills? He said that he couldn't believe this troublemaker. She was simply spouting nonsense. At this moment, the trembling of the ground became even more obvious. Lan Dimeo shouted sternly, "She doesn't know how to refine pills at all. Hurry up and follow me in. Otherwise, once the earth cracks spread over, she will definitely die." However, neither Lan Luoyen and the others nor old Tua moved. Lan Dimeo was so angry that he almost fainted. What kind of bewitching potion did this troublemaker give these people? Why were all of them so confident in her? There was nothing he could do. These people did not move, and Lan Dimeo could not leave alone with his guards. He could only blow his beard and stare at them. He had already thought that if Yun Chujie's pill refinement failed, he would directly carry her into the blood curse miasma forest to prevent her from causing any more trouble. At this moment, Yun Chujio opened the lid of the pill furnace again, and immediately, a rich medicinal fragrance spread out. Lan Dimeo widened his eyes and stretched his neck to look into the pill furnace. There were 10 round yuan gun pills in the pill furnace. Moreover, there were circles of pill patterns on them. Lan Dimeo rubbed his eyes and tugged at his beard. He grimaced in pain. Was he dreaming? How was this possible? A 100% success rate? And they were all supreme-grade pills? And it only took half an hour? Oh my God! If any of these were to be revealed, it would be a jaw-dropping event. Yun Chujio took out the pill and wanted to pass it to Lan Dimeo. Seeing that he looked as if he had seen a ghost, she could only pass the pill to Elder Tua. Elder Tua, divide 1 pill into 6 portions and distribute it. I'll continue refining. Before the earth fissure spreads over, I should be able to refine 6 more batches. Although Elder Tua was also very shocked, he was much better than Lan Dimeo. He immediately nodded and agreed. Yun Chujio continued to refine pills. Actually, if she used the Heaven and Earth Universal Furnace, it would be easier to refine. Moreover, she could refine heaven-grade pills. However, possessing wealth was a sin. She didn't want to take the risk. Most importantly, even if she used an ordinary pill refining furnace, she could still refine pills that could detoxify the poison. There was no need to take the risk. Lan Dimeo finally regained his senses. However, he was still a little worried. Could this pill that was refined from the essence that caused trouble really resist the poison miasma? He thought for a moment and asked for a pill from Elder Tua. After swallowing it, he immediately went to the edge of the blood curse poison miasma forest. He was surprised to find that the poison miasma really did not affect him at all. How was this possible? Even the Mu family's exclusive detoxification pill could only resist 70 to 80% of the miasma, and the rest of it had to be suppressed by the spiritual power in his body. However, the pill refined from trouble could still resist all the miasma after it was divided into 6 parts. Chapter 5085, Your Lesson is. Lan Dimeo was stunned for a while. For a moment he could not digest it. In that case, wasn't the pill concocting skill of the troublemaker even better than the elders of the Mu family? However, he quickly refuted this conclusion. He estimated that the troublemaker was most likely more proficient in concocting this kind of pill. After all, she was still young. How could she be better than the elders of the Mu family? Yes, that must be the case. Thinking about it, the shock in his heart was not that great. However, no matter what, It was a great thing that the troublemaker could refine the antidote pill. He could imagine how shocked the people of the Mu family would be when they saw them pass through the blood-cursed miasma forest safely. When Lan Dimeo thought of this, he recalled the betrayal of Lan Luohan and Lan Luoshan. His heart was filled with hatred, anger, and deep disappointment. He truly wanted to nurture Lan Luohan. Most of the cultivation resources of the 3 branches had been given to Lan Luohan. Who would have thought that he would raise an ingrate? It was not even as good as the troublemaker he found halfway. Lan Dimeo returned to his original spot with a complicated feeling. At this moment, Yun Chujio was already refining the 4th batch of detoxification pills. However, the trembling of the ground was getting stronger and stronger. From afar, one could even see the earth chi soaring into the sky. Yun Chujio frowned. There was not enough time. She gritted her teeth and took out another alchemy furnace. She was prepared to concoct 2 furnaces at the same time. This way she would have more time. This was her first time trying. However, this fellow felt that since he could draw talismans with both his hands, it should not be difficult for him to concoct pills at the same time. If it did not work, she could only take out the heaven and earth furnace. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Oh God, were they seeing things? This troublemaker actually wanted to refine 2 pill furnaces at the same time. What kind of joke was this? This was simply unheard of. One had to know that refining pills required extreme concentration. There couldn't be the slightest bit of distraction. 2 pill furnaces? This was simply a joke. Lan Dimeo was so angry that he was twitching. If he was not afraid of disturbing Yun Chujio, he would have scolded her. Was he stupid? Was he stupid? Did he not know that haste makes waste? If that was the case, the 2 furnaces of pills would probably be nullified. This troublemaker was really out of tune. The others also shook their heads. This troublemaker was usually quite smart. Why was he being a fool today? However, after a while, the crowd did not smell the burnt smell that they had expected. Moreover, there was already a medicinal fragrance coming from it. Could it really be a success? Everyone's gaze fell on the 2 pill furnaces. Their hearts were in their throats. They vaguely felt that a miracle was about to happen. Finally, Yun Chujio took a deep breath and opened the lid of the 2 pill furnaces. Then, a disappointed expression appeared on her face. When the crowd saw this, they were instantly discouraged. Just as they had said, this didn't work. This troublemaker insisted on doing this. Now, they had wasted half an hour in vain. Lan Dimeo angrily shouted, "You just have to refine it step by step. Why do you have to do such a thing? Refining 2 furnaces of pills at the same time is simply wishful thinking. Why don't you go to heaven? Have you failed now? You became impetuous after a little achievement, now you have learned your lesson, right?" Yun Chujio nodded obediently. "Great uncle, what you taught me is right, I will pay attention next time." "Well, you can share the pills inside with everyone." "Share what? What did you say?" Lan Dimeo couldn't react for a moment. What did he mean? Chapter 5086 entered the blood-curse miasma forest. Yun Chujio sighed. "Sigh, this is the first time I've concocted pills like this, so the success rate is too low. The furnace on the left only has an 80% success rate. Looks like you'll have to be careful and practice well in the future." Lan Dimeo looked into the 2 pill furnaces in a daze. He saw that one of the pill furnaces contained 10 detoxifying pills, while the other furnace contained, weren't these also 10 detoxification pills? The first thought that came to Lan Dimeo's mind was, the troublemaker didn't know how to count? However, he quickly reacted. Although there were 10 detoxification pills in the pill furnace, 8 of them were transcendent-grade pills, and the other 2 were upper-grade pills. Was this the low pill success rate mentioned by the troublemaker? Could it be that the upper-grade pills were considered a failure in her hands? Yun Chujio found it funny when she saw Lan Dimeo's dull expression. She could only pass the pills to old Tua and said, "Those 2 upper-grade pills are much less effective. Let's split them into 2. Although old Tua was also very shocked, he was much calmer than Lan Dimeo. He nodded, indicating that Yun Chujio could continue to refine pills. He felt that it was understandable that Yun Chujio could refine 2 cauldrons of pills at the same time. After all, this troublemaker could command 9 immortal swords at the same time. It showed that her spiritual sense was very strong, so she could refine 2 cauldrons of pills at the same time. It was normal, right? Yun Chujio refined 2 cauldrons of pills. At this time, the earth chi was getting closer and closer. Yun Chujio asked someone to distribute the pills and said, "The detoxification pills that you have consumed can last for a day. After entering the blood curse miasma forest, I will find an opportunity to refine the detoxification pills again, so everyone need not worry." Everyone immediately nodded their heads in gratitude and agreed. At this time, in their eyes, the troublemaker had become a living bodhisattva who saved the suffering and saved the suffering. Naturally, she was obedient. However, Yun Chujio was pondering in her heart. Although she could control 2 alchemy cauldrons after becoming proficient, the efficiency of this was still too low. If she stuffed many ingredients into a large alchemy furnace, would she be able to refine many pills in one furnace? The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. If there was a chance, she could try using the heaven and earth furnace. If she succeeded, refining pills in the future would be much easier. She could avoid refining one furnace after another. It would be too fucking torturous. Lan Dimeo coughed dryly and felt a little embarrassed. He wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. After all, he had taught Yun Chujio a lesson previously. Fortunately, Elder Tua said, "The earth chi will soon spread to this place. Everyone, enter the blood curse miasma forest." Everyone immediately entered the blood curse forest. The trees growing in the blood curse forest were all scarlet like blood. Even the weeds on the ground were red. It made people unconsciously feel a sense of fear. It was as if everything here was made of blood, and it was very terrifying. At this moment, everyone couldn't care much, because the earth chi was far more terrifying than the blood curse miasma forest. Moreover, the blood curse was only a legend, and it might not really be that terrifying. Everyone moved quickly along the way, and they didn't encounter any demon beasts. In addition, the detoxification pill that Yun Chujio refined was quite effective, so everyone felt a little more at ease. During this period, Lan Dimeo leaped onto the treetop and looked into the distance. Although the earth aura had already spread to the blood curse miasma forest, it did not spread very quickly. After reaching a safe distance, Yun Chujio began to refine pills again. When they found that the earth aura was close, the group would continue on their journey. This way they were safe and sound. Chapter 5087, Blood Curse. The Mu family had set off 2 hours earlier, and the Lan family had stopped to wait for Yun Chujio to refine the medicine. As a result, they were 100 li ahead of the Bai Li family. Since the Mu family's detoxification pill could only resist 70 to 80% of the poisonous miasma, and they needed to use a portion of their spiritual power to suppress the poisonous gas that surged into their bodies, everyone's expressions were not very relaxed. However, when they thought that the Lan family members should have been poisoned to death by the poisonous miasma, Mu Kelu, Qianqing, and Zhuang Ruhai all felt very proud. Especially Mu Kelu. Before he came to the divine relic trial, he had brought many detoxification pills just in case. He did not expect that they would come in great use now. He felt that he had a divine plan. The 2 of you, the members of the Lan family, must have already died. Once that Hunchback and Lan Dimeo died, the Lan family suffered heavy losses. "This is simply like adding wings to a tiger for our next step," Mu Kelu said proudly. Qianqing and Zhuang Ruhai now had a request from Mu Kelu. After all, they had to rely on the antidote pills that he distributed every day. Therefore, they fawned over him. "It's all thanks to Brother Mu's antidote pills. Otherwise, our 2 families would end up like the Lan family." Mu Kelu became even more smug when he heard that. However, he still said hypocritically, "It's only right for our 3 families to stand together through thick and thin." Qianqing and Zhuang Ruhai flattered him a little more before Zhuang Ruhai said, "This blood curse miasma forest covers a large area. It's said that the miasma gets thicker the deeper we go into it. There's also a legend about the blood curse. We should be more careful." We can use our spiritual power to suppress the remaining poisonous gas. However, it said that this blood curse is very strange. I'm really not sure. Mu Kelu also said with some worry. Qi Anqing said nonchalantly, the blood curse is just a legend. Maybe it's an illusion after a person is poisoned. Besides, we have so many people. Even if there is a so-called blood curse, we are not afraid. Mu Kelu and Zhuang Ruhai thought about it. It made sense. Their 3 families had more than 1,000 people. Even if they encountered a blood curse, it should not be a problem. At this moment, they heard a shrill scream. The 3 of them were shocked and quickly rushed towards the source of the scream. At this moment, the place was already in chaos. Someone shouted in fear, "Blood curse! It must be a blood curse. This blood curse miasma forest has been cursed by someone. It's really a blood curse. It's too scary. We can't get out. We're definitely going to die here." With someone shouting like this, panic spread quickly, and everyone was in a mess. Zhuang Ruhai shouted, "Shut up. If anyone talks nonsense again, kill them without mercy." Everyone didn't dare to speak anymore, but their faces were full of panic and fear. Zhuang Ruhai and the other 2 frowned and looked at the location of the incident. There was only a pool of blood on the ground, and it was quickly seeping into the ground. A moment later, there was only a storage ring left on the ground, as if nothing had happened. What on earth is going on? Zhuang Ruhai looked at the people around him. A witness described the process. The guard who died just now suddenly screamed, and his body instantly turned into blood. Hearing this, everyone was even more terrified. Without any warning, he had turned into blood. If this was not a blood curse, then what was it? Mu Kelu and the other 2's expressions also became cold. Zhuang Ruhai immediately said, "Whether it's a blood curse or not, this place is very dangerous. Hurry up and leave this place." Chapter 5088 was just retribution. Everyone was already scared out of their wits, so after hearing Zhuang Ruhai's words, they could not wait to leave. However, the nightmare had begun. Every once in a while, there would be screams, and from time to time, the guards would turn into blood for no reason. No one knew who would die next, and this unknown danger made everyone's hair stand on end. Everyone did not dare to rest for even a second. They only hoped to leave the blood curse miasma forest as soon as possible. It was too terrifying. However, they still had to divert their spiritual power to suppress the miasma poison in their bodies. Their speed would inevitably be affected. No matter how anxious they were, it was impossible for them to leave the blood curse miasma forest in a short period of time. As time passed, over 100 people had already turned into blood. Everyone's hearts became even more fearful. Just as they were feeling anxious and uneasy, the members of the Lan family caught up. This was not strange. The members of the Lan family did not need to allocate a portion of their spiritual power to resist the miasma poison. In addition, Yun Chujio had already refined enough detoxifying pills, so they did not need to waste time refining pills. Thus, they caught up. Mu Kelu and the others looked as if they had seen a ghost when they saw the members of the Lan family. They didn't die? How was this possible? You didn't die? Mu Kelu blurted out. After saying that, he felt that something wasn't right and said, "Brother Dimeo, I mean, it's great that you guys are okay. Where did you get the antidote pills?" Lan Dimeo saw his surprised expression and was very relieved. However, seeing that their number seemed to be a little lower, he couldn't help but wonder, could it be that those people were poisoned to death? Lan Dimeo did not want to bother with him at first, but after thinking for a while, he said, "I bought some detoxifying pills from somewhere else. I thought it would be useless, but I didn't expect it to be so effective." Mu Keela's eyes sparkled. He did not quite believe it. Only the Mu family had detoxifying pills for the poisonous miasma. Where did Lan Dimeo get them? Just as he was about to probe again, Zhuang Ruhai said first, "That's great. Then the 4 of us can advance and retreat together, so that we can take care of each other." Lan Dimeo thought about it and did not refuse. "It's better to follow your orders. Then let's go together." Yun Chujio's eyes flashed, but she did not say anything. Mu Kelu frowned and found an opportunity to ask Zhuang Ruhai, Brother Zhuang, what do you mean by this? I took a rough look just now and found that the Lan family has no fewer people, which means that they are not affected by the blood curse. There must be something going on here, Zhuang Ruhai said. Is that so? Why is it like this? But it's also possible that they were behind us, so they weren't affected, Mu Kelly guessed. I don't know. Let's wait and see. Anyway, they have fewer people than us, so we're not afraid of them overturning the sky, Zhuang Ruhai said coldly. At this moment, a scream was heard and another guard turned into blood under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This was the first time the Lan family members saw such a situation. They were all frightened. What was going on? Lan Luofeng leaned over to Yun Chujia's side and said weakly, Little Jiao, what is going on? We have never encountered such a situation before. Yun Chujio did not reply. Instead, she walked to the vicinity of the blood to take a look. The Mu family members felt that Yun Chujio was most likely mentally ill. She was so close. Wasn't she afraid that the blood curse would spread to her body? Yun Chujio squatted and looked for a while. Then she returned to the team expressionlessly. Lan Luofeng quickly came over. Little Jiao, did you find out what happened? Yun Chujio curled her lips. It's nothing. It's just retribution. Yun Chujia's voice was not soft, so many people heard her. The Mu family and the others were naturally furious. This bitch's words were really too harsh. What was karma? They didn't do anything right. Mu Zian said with a very unfriendly expression, Yun Chujio, what do you mean by this? Yun Chujio shrugged her shoulders. It's a literal meaning. Also, I'm having a private conversation with Sister Luofeng. Why did you interrupt? Could it be that you have a hobby of prying into other people's privacy? Mu Zian was so angry that her face turned red. Private conversation? How could such a loud voice be called private conversation? Yun Chujio did not wait for Mu Zian to say anything. She said to Lan Dimeo, Uncle, Grandfather, we're walking too slowly now. Let's speed up. Lan Dimeo frowned. He understood what Yun Chujio meant. She was planning to separate from the Mu family. Alpha Di Alphareta Theta Nu Epsilon. Just as he was hesitating, Yun Chujio said to Lan Luoyen and the rest as well as the guards behind her, Follow me. Then, Lan Dimeo was stunned to see that both Lan Luoyen and the guards did not even look at him. They all followed Yun Chujio and ran quickly. Lan Dimeo's face stiffened. He was the leader, all right? Why did he listen to that troublemaker's orders now? Elder Tua said in a deep voice, Let's go. Lan Dimeo finally had some comfort in his heart. At least Elder Tua was still on his side. However, old Tua continued, If you don't leave, you can stay here by yourself. Lan Dimeo had no choice but to clench his teeth and quickly chase after him. Roelfa Di Alpha and Nu Amukelu and the others were puzzled at first, but then they showed an incredulous expression, because they found that the Lan family members were extremely fast and soon disappeared from their sight. They are actually moving at full speed. They didn't even split their spiritual power to suppress the miasma poison, Qi Anqing said in disbelief. Mu Kelu was also stunned, and then he snorted coldly. It seems that they were scared out of their wits by the blood curse, so they didn't care about it and rushed at full speed. Humph, that's good too. They are in front of us. Maybe the focus of the blood curse's attack will shift to them. When everyone heard this, they felt that what he said made sense. The Lan family members had really gone crazy. However, in the next few days, there were still people from the Mu family who continued to turn into blood. Moreover, the situation was getting more and more serious. The only thing that made Mu Kelu and the others feel relieved was that there were no casualties among Mu Zian and the others. Most of the dead were guards. On this day, someone finally discovered some clues. There were some small holes where the dead had turned into blood. Could it be that the so-called blood curse was related to these holes? Mu Kelu and the other two gritted their teeth and ordered their subordinates to open up the spiritual energy barrier below. In the end, they found an ant nest filled with tiny red ants. The ant was very small, only the size of a needle tip. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to find it. Someone threw out the corpse of a demonic beast. After the ant climbed up, the corpse instantly turned into blood. Everyone finally understood that it was not a blood curse. It was all done by this tiny ant. Then the question came. Why did these ants attack them instead of attacking the Lan family? Moreover, they did not attack Mukelu and the others. Instead, they chose some guards. Chapter 5090. No matter how hard they thought about it, they could not figure it out. However, when they found the culprit, the fear in their hearts was greatly reduced. As for the method of defense, it was simple. They only needed to waste some spiritual energy to set up a spiritual energy shield below the knees, and they could avoid being attacked by those tiny ants again. However, in this way they moved even slower. On this day, Zhuang Ruhai suddenly thought of a possibility. He said to Mukelu and Qianqing, "If my hypothesis is correct, then it can explain why those ants didn't attack the Lan family." Mukelu and Qianqing asked curiously, "What hypothesis?" "The detoxification pill they took can completely resist the miasma poison," Zhuang Ruhai said. Mukelu curled his lips when he heard that. "Impossible. The secret detoxification pill of our Mu family can only resist 70 to 80% of the miasma poison. How can their detoxification pill do that?" Zhuang Ruhai said non-committally, "If that's not the case, then why did they catch up to us when they were clearly behind us earlier? Why could they travel at full speed and leave us behind later? If they were taking the risk, we would have seen their bodies long ago." Mukelu was stunned, but he still felt that it was impossible. Qianqing asked from the side, "Even if the hypothesis you said is true, what does it have to do with the ants?" "If my guess is correct, those ants will only attack those who are poisoned. We weren't attacked in the first few days because we had just entered the blood curse miasma forest. The miasma poison accumulated in our bodies wasn't much, so we didn't attract the ants' attacks." Mukelu said unwillingly, "Then why didn't the ants attack us in purple smoke?" "It's very simple. Because the number of detoxification pills we took was more than those guards, and the grade was also higher than theirs, so the poison accumulated in our bodies was much less. As for the Lan family, because their detoxifying pills can completely resist the poison, they will naturally not be attacked by ants," Zhuang Ruhai explained. After a moment of silence, Qianqing said, "I think Brother Zhuang's guess is reasonable. But where did the Lan family get the detoxifying pills? They are actually more powerful than the Mu family's detoxifying pills?" No wonder Yun Chujio said that it was retribution. It turns out that she was mocking Brother Mu for not selling them the detoxifying pills. Mukila's expression turned ugly when he heard that. Zhuang Ruhai quickly said, "The Lan family and the Zen sect have a close relationship. Maybe the Zen sect gave it to them. There's no need for the two of you to dwell on this matter. Since we have already found the reason, we will be able to pass through the blood curse miasma forest very soon. As for the rest of the matter, we will take a long time to think about it." Qianqing also realized that he had said something wrong and quickly added, "Brother Zhuang is right. Brother Mu, I don't know how to speak. Don't take it to heart. After we are completely out of danger, just kill those people from the Lan family." Although Mukelu was still not very happy, he could not say anything, so he could only say a few words perfunctorily. 3 days later, Mukelu and the others finally walked out of the blood curse miasma forest. After a simple repair and forcing out the miasma poison in their bodies, they continued to move forward. They had no choice. The earth chi behind them was constantly spreading, so they had no choice but to leave. Zhuang Ruhai took out the map and looked at it. He said in a low voice, "Another 300 li and we will reach the 10,000-year-old swamp, which is 10,000 times scarier than the blood curse miasma forest. Do you have any good ideas?" Bailey asked. Mukelu smiled. "Brother Zhuang, have you forgotten what the Qi family is good at?" Chapter 5091. Swamp Boat. Zhuang Ruhai was stunned at first, then laughed out loud. "Yes, I forgot. The Qi family's equipment shop is all over the heavy cloud continent. Naturally, they have the equipment needed to cross the swamp. But I wonder if Brother Qi has these with you?" Not only did the Qi family deal in all kinds of spiritual equipment, but they also had many refiners. Although they could not compare to the Qing family of the Valley of Fog, they were still much stronger than the other three families. Hearing their words, Qi Anqing felt somewhat proud, but he still said, I do have a few swamp ships here, but you also know that the 10,000-year-old swamp is different from ordinary swamps. To be honest, I'm not too sure about it either. Mu Kelu and Zhuang Ruhai knew that he was right. The 10,000-year-old swamp had always been a place of death and no return. Even the border areas were full of dangers. It was better not to go in if possible. How about this? We'll see when the time comes. Maybe when the earth dragon turns over, we won't be able to say anything, Zhuang Ruhai said. The group quickly arrived at the periphery of the 10,000-year-old swamp. As expected, they met the members of the Lan family. The two sides were on guard against each other. Since the situation was unknown and neither of them wanted to use up their strength, it was still acceptable on the surface. After a few simple pleasantries, Zhuang Ruhai probed, Brother Dimeo, where did you get the antidote pill in your hand? Could it be the Zen sect? Of course, Lan Dimeo would not stupidly reveal the fact that Yun Chujio knew how to refine pills. He smiled non-committally and did not say anything. Zhuang Ruhai and the other two saw the situation and thought that he had tacitly agreed. They secretly hated in their hearts. This Zen sect had never been involved in worldly affairs, so how could they be so close to the Lan family recently? In the next 2 days, everyone realized that the earth qi did not spread over. They were all relieved. After all, no one wanted to enter the 10,000-year-old swamp. However, on the morning of the third day, everyone was horrified to find that the earth qi was actually spreading over here, and it was spreading very quickly. Mu Kalu and the others discussed. Now, they could only enter the 10,000-year-old swamp. At least, they had a chance of survival. Immediately, Qi Anqing took out 4 swamp boats. Lan Dimeo thought to himself that this Qi Anqing was more particular than Mu Kelu. Since he took out 4 boats, did it mean that he was going to lend one to the Lan family? However, he soon realized that he was overthinking. Mu Kelu, Qi Anqing, and Zhuang Ruhai brought the juniors of each family onto one of the swamp boats. The guards of the 3 families each boarded a swamp boat. The Lan family had no share at all. Lan Dimeo had no choice but to bite the bullet and ask, Brother Qi, can you lend us a swamp boat? Qi Anqing put on a fake smile and said, Brother Dimeo, as you can see, our people can barely sit down. We really can't let you on. In fact, there were many empty seats on the 4 swamp boats. If they squeezed together, they could let the Lan family on. Moreover, Qi Anqing still had 3 swamp boats. Lan Dimeo knew that it was useless to say more, so he decided not to say anything. He wanted to snatch the boat, but he had no chance of winning. In fact, there was an ordinary boat in his storage ring, but a swamp boat was different from an ordinary boat. An ordinary boat had a certain depth of draft, while a swamp boat was almost completely floating on the surface of the water. An ordinary boat could easily sink into the swamp below the surface of the swamp, and then they would definitely die. At this moment, Qi Anqing suddenly said, Brother Dimeo, we have some friendship. I can't just stand by and do nothing. How about this? I'll give you 5 quotas and allow 5 of you to board the boat. As for who these 5 quotas are for, you can decide for yourself. Chapter 5092, Whirlpool. Lan Dimeo could not help but fly into a rage when he heard Qi Anqing's words. Qi, if you don't want to borrow it, then don't borrow it. You should never have such malicious thoughts. Are you planning to sow discord between our Lan family and watch the show? This is really outrageous. Qi Anqing was not angry even though his thoughts were exposed. He said with a fake smile, Brother Dimeo, this is your fault. I was being kind. Since you don't appreciate my kindness, then forget it. After Qi Anqing said that, he commanded the 4 swamp ships to leave. Lan Dimeo was so angry that he gritted his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. He directly summoned the big ship from his storage ring. Although he knew that ordinary ships would not work in the swamp, at least it was better than nothing. Just as he was about to command everyone to board the ship, he heard Yun Chujio say, Uncle, Grandpa, your ship looks good, but I'm afraid it won't work in the swamp. Lan Dimeo said snappily, Of course I know it won't work, but it's still better than nothing. Don't tell me you have a swamp ship. If you give me this ship, I'll make a few swamp ships for you, Yun Chujio said with a smile. Lan Dimeo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This troublemaker was so greedy that he even made flowers out of greed. However, saving his life was more important now. He gritted his teeth. Do you really have a swamp boat? Of course. It's just that my swamp boat was bought in the sky-high continent. It's definitely not as good as the Chi family's, but it's still better than your ordinary boat. This fellow cherished her life. In addition, she was not short of money, so she had prepared everything she could. It was just that after she arrived at the heavy cloud continent, she had never had the chance to go out for a walk. Otherwise, she would definitely have prepared more things. Lan Dimeo did not have the mood to be picky now. As long as it was a swamp ship, it would be fine. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and used his large ship to exchange for 3 swamp ships. Yun Chujia's swamp ship was much smaller than the Chi family's. Therefore, the Lan family members took 3 ships to sit down. At this moment, the Earth aura was getting closer and closer. Everyone immediately activated the swamp ship and headed towards the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp. At this moment, they were at the periphery of the 10,000-year-old swamp. It did not look as terrifying as the rumors said. Although there were some demonic beasts that occasionally showed their heads, they were intimidated by everyone's aura and tactfully did not come over to attack. Everyone's mood also relaxed slightly. Lan Luoyen said, "It seems that this rumor cannot be trusted. This 10,000-year-old swamp looks no different from an ordinary swamp. Moreover, the water surface seems to be much calmer than the ordinary swamp. Could it be that everyone is spreading rumors?" Lan Dimeo said coldly, "Don't take it lightly. The 10,000-year-old swamp is definitely not as simple as it looks. Moreover, this is only the periphery of the 10,000-year-old swamp. The deeper you go in, the more dangerous it is." Lan Luoyen shrunk her neck. Although she did not say anything, she did not think much of it in her heart. She felt that Lan Dimeo was exaggerating. However, she soon realized that Lan Dimeo wasn't exaggerating, because she saw the Chi family's 4 ships spinning in the same place from afar. They couldn't go any further. Lan Dimeo didn't know what was going on ahead. He wanted to stop moving, but the Earth Chi was less than 10 miles away from the 10,000-year-old swamp. He could only grit his teeth and order the ships to continue moving forward. As they got closer, they realized that the Chi family's 4 ships had strangely fallen into the whirlpool. That was why they had been spinning on the spot. To be precise, they had not been spinning on the spot. They had only walked for a short distance before they fell into the whirlpool again. It looked like they were spinning on the spot. Chapter 5093, Thousand Leaves Golden Bowl Lotus. Chi Anqing looked at the Lan family members and sneered, "I didn't expect you to have a swamp boat. However, your swamp boat is much worse than ours. Since we have spent so much effort, you probably won't be able to get out after being trapped in the whirlpool. What do you think? Why don't you consider my previous suggestion?" Lan Dimeo was naturally very angry, and his heart became even more uncertain. The Chi family's swamp boat had spent so much effort to get out of the whirlpool. If their boat were to be trapped in the whirlpool, they probably wouldn't be able to get out for a while. At this time, Yun Chujio walked to his side and whispered, "Uncle, Grandpa, do you see those water plants with beautiful yellow flowers?" Lan Dimeo said unhappily, "I'm not blind, so of course I saw them. What time is it now? Do you still have the time to admire the flowers?" Yun Chujio was not angry and said with a smile, "That kind of water plant is called the Thousand Leaves Golden Bowl Lotus. When it blooms, its stem is very fragile, and the larger the current, the more likely it will be broken. Since it is still growing, it means that there are no whirlpools nearby. We just need to use it as a reference and we can avoid the whirlpools formed by the undercurrents." Lan Dimeo's old face immediately turned red. He opened his mouth and said dryly, "Then, well, do as you say." Lan Dimeo asked someone to signal for the 2 ships behind him to follow behind the ship. Then he followed Yun Chujia's instructions and walked along the vicinity of the Thousand Leaves Golden Bowl Lotus, which was growing well, but they really did not encounter any whirlpools. Lan Dimeo looked at Chi Anqing and the others who were still circling behind him and felt that he was proud of himself. he said loudly, "there's nothing we can do. Although our swamp ship is not as advanced as yours, our luck is good. Don't you think it's infuriating?" Chi Anqing was almost angered to death. Why didn't the Lan family's ship fall into the whirlpool? At this moment, Mu Kelif finally reacted and said loudly, "I know. Quick, we also move along the 1,000-leaf golden bowl lotuses that are growing well. There's no whirlpool nearby." Chi Anqing hurriedly commanded the 4 ships to act according to his instructions. As expected, they did not fall into the whirlpool again. Only then did Mu Kelu explain the reason. His face was somewhat vexed. As a member of an alchemy aristocratic family, he actually did not think of this. It was really not right. However, how did the Lan family discover this? Could it be that hunchback? After crossing the whirlpool area, the Chi family's ships once again surpassed the Lan family's. After all, their ships were much more advanced than the Lan family's ships. They wanted to let the Lan family scout ahead, but who knew if the Earth Chi behind them would suddenly surge in? Therefore, it was more important to escape as fast as possible. Lan Dimeo looked at the Chi family and the others who were quickly pulling away from them and could only stare blankly. After all, their boat speed was limited. Yun Chujio came over and said with a smile, "Great uncle, as the saying goes, haste makes waste. Our boat is slow, but it also has its advantages. It's also good to let them scout ahead." Lan Dimeo sighed. "Although what you said makes sense, we're just afraid that the Earth's chi will spread over and we won't be able to escape in time." Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips. Looking at the trend, it should be fine for the time being. Lan Dimeo saw that Yun Chujio's tone was somewhat certain and asked in surprise, "Why do you say so?" Yun Chujio pointed at the demonic beasts that were looking around. If the Earth Chi is about to spread over, these swamp demon beasts wouldn't have the leisure to wait for an opportunity to attack us. They would have already run away. Chapter 5094, How About Acting Cute? Lan Dimeo was stunned. That's right, demonic beasts had a much sharper sense of natural disasters than humans. Since these demonic beasts didn't flee in panic, it could be seen that the Earth Chi wouldn't spread to this place in a short period of time. Lan Dimeo sighed in his heart. Putting everything else aside, this troublemaker was indeed smart. No wonder the old ancestor looked at her in a different light. With this thought in mind, Lan Dimeo could not help but feel a lot more relaxed. When he thought of the Chi family's people rushing to the front to scout for them, he felt that it was too fucking satisfying. If it was not for the wrong occasion, he would have laughed out loud 3 times. Now, he found Yun Chujio more pleasing to the eye, especially after he was so angry with Lan Luohan and Lan Luoshan that he almost vomited blood. He felt that this little girl who was found halfway was still very considerate. An hour later, a shrill scream came from the front. Lan Dimeo and the others were shocked. What happened? Could it be that the Chi family and the others were attacked by demonic beasts? When they got closer, they found that the Chi family's 4 ships were surrounded by several huge demonic beasts. Lan Dimeo's expression changed. Swamp Tyrant Crocodile, a level 77 demonic beast. It's equivalent to a human cultivator at the 9th level of the extreme spiritual realm. Although their spiritual power isn't particularly high, they have the geographical advantage and are very difficult to deal with. When Lan Luoyen and the others heard this, they immediately felt a cold breeze on their backs. The so-called spiritual power wasn't particularly high compared to what Lan Dimeo said. To them, this was already very high. One had to know that Lan Luoyen was only at the 4th level of the extreme spiritual realm, while He Xinjiu was only at the 5th level of the extreme spiritual realm. Most importantly, this was a swamp. No matter how high your spiritual power was, there was no room for you to use it. The Chi family and the others were in a very passive position. Even though they had a lot of people, they could only attack from the boat. In addition, those swamp tyrant crocodiles were very strong, so not only were they unable to disperse them. However, a few guards who were standing by the boat were dragged into the water and lost their lives. Lan Dimeo's expression was very cold. If they were in the river or the sea, the Lan family would have a great advantage since most of them had water spiritual roots. The bad thing was that this was a swamp. Once they jumped into the water, they would easily sink into the mud and lose their lives. Moreover, he could predict that once the Chi family and the others escaped, the swamp tyrant crocodiles would turn around and attack the Lan family's ships. What should he do? Yun Chujio was also a little worried. If De Hua had not disappeared, she could have released De Hua. At least De Hua could enter the water to block them for a while, giving them time to escape. However, now that De Hua had disappeared, there was only a useless and destructive Goei Batsao left. She had not forgotten that she had almost been killed by this idiot in Supreme City. It was better not to release it to harm her. The Guai Chao in her dantian felt that she had been wronged to death. That was just an accident, okay? Moreover, who knew that this stupid girl would hide behind it? If she had to share the responsibility, she would have to take half of it, okay? If she didn't want to let it go, she wouldn't let it go. Did she think that it would want to go out? However, when this guy thought about being able to jump around freely outside, he felt a little itchy. Why not act cute and let the stupid girl let it go? Yun Chujio didn't know what Guai Chao was thinking. She counted all her trump cards, and the power of the small flame in the water was greatly reduced. It was basically useless. Most of her stupid cuties were not good at fighting in the water. The little bastard knew how to swim, but he could not resist the fact that he was a cub, so he could not be of much use. For a moment, she had no clue. Chapter 5095. Guai Chao invites the battle. The 10,000-year-old swamp forbade the use of talismans. Although she still had chili powder, she could only get it once. It was really difficult. While Yun Chujio was worrying, the Chi family members in front had already gotten rid of the swamp tyrant crocodiles. Although they were somewhat passive, they had a large number of people. In the end, they used their spiritual beasts to disperse the swamp tyrant crocodiles. The swamp tyrant crocodiles had already swallowed a few people. How could they give up when they had just tasted the sweetness? However, they were afraid that the Chi family had a large number of people, so they immediately swam towards the 3 boats of the Lan family. The expressions of the Lan family members were solemn. They all knew that a bloody battle was inevitable. Although they should be able to win in the end, they would definitely have to pay a certain price. Even if it was a spirit beast with a water element spiritual root, if its master did not enter the water, they would at most be able to fight on the surface of the water. In addition, these swamp overlord crocodiles had strong bodies, so they would not be able to do anything to them for a while. Seeing that the swamp overlord crocodiles were getting closer and closer, Yun Chujio gritted her teeth. In the end, she decided to release the Goei Batsao to divert their attention. Of course, there was another reason. The Guai Chao kept acting cute in her dantian. Even though it couldn't speak, Yun Chujio knew that it was asking for a fight. She decided to trust it again. If it messed up again, then it would never come out again. Therefore, when the swamp overlord crocodiles were about to approach the 3 ships of the Lan family, Yun Chujio put her hands on her hips and shouted, "Stop!" This shout didn't do anything to those swamp tyrant crocodiles, but it gave Lan Dimeo and the others a big scare. Was this guy crazy? Those swamp tyrant crocodiles wouldn't listen to Hei Shinjio. Their huge protruding eyes were full of greed and disdain as they continued to approach the ship. "I've given you face, haven't I? How dare you come here? Today, I'll let you see the one and only spiritual beast in the world," Yun Chujio said while giving Lan Dimeo a look. Lan Dimeo didn't quite understand what she meant. Fortunately, Lan Luofeng reminded him in a low voice, "Grandfather, little Gio meant that we should find an opportunity to escape soon." Only then did Lan Dimeo understand. But would there be an opportunity to escape? It wasn't like he had never seen this spiritual beast that caused trouble. Wasn't it just a stalk of Goei Batsao? At this moment, Yun Chujio had already released the Goei Batsao. Those swamp tyrant crocodiles were stunned. What the hell was this? There was such a thing in a human spiritual beast? Wasn't this just an unremarkable piece of broken grass? Goei Batsao knew that Yun Chujio wanted it to attract the attention of those swamp tyrant crocodiles, so it waved its leaves vigorously as if it was possessed. As expected, the swamp tyrant crocodiles were attracted by the Goeibatsao, because they did not know what the Goeibatsao was trying to do. Could it be that it was holding some big move? Seeing this, Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and suddenly had an idea. Yun Chujio whispered to Lan Dimeo, "Tell everyone that when they see my hand signal, they will release their spiritual beasts to block the attacks of the swamp tyrant crocodiles and then move forward at full speed." Lan Dimeo felt that this idea was more reliable. Although they couldn't do anything to the swamp tyrant crocodiles by releasing their spiritual beasts at the same time, they could still block them for a while. After all, there were many of them. Therefore, when the ship was about a few hundred feet away from the swamp tyrant crocodiles, Yun Chujio waved her hand. The Lan family members released their spiritual beasts and attacked the swamp tyrant crocodiles at the same time. Chapter 5096 stood at the peak of the grass life. Although those swamp tyrant crocodiles were not easy to deal with, they were surrounded by so many spiritual beasts at the same time. There was no chance for them to break out of the encirclement and chase after the 3 ships of the Lan family. Previously, these swamp tyrant crocodiles had suddenly emerged from the water. The Chi family and the others were also caught unprepared. Otherwise, they would not have been so passive. The 3 boats of the Lan family moved forward at the fastest speed, afraid that the swamp tyrant crocodiles would catch up after they had gotten rid of the spiritual beasts. Yun Chujio said to Lan Dimeo, "Uncle Grandfather, you don't have to worry too much. If those swamp tyrant crocodiles catch up again, we will release the spiritual beasts in advance. They won't be able to catch up to us so easily." Lan Dimeo nodded and felt slightly at ease. It seemed that letting the Chi family and the others go ahead was the right thing to do. At the very least, they would have a buffer time when they encountered any situation. Guai Chao, who was waving its leaves, saw that Yun Chujio and the other ship had already gone far away. It could not help but curse in its heart, "This damned girl is too heartless. She actually left just like that. What should it do?" No, it was not easy to come out. It had to seize the opportunity. Thus, this fellow obviously still had a lot of spiritual power, but it pretended to have exhausted its spiritual power and dissipated. This fellow once again turned into a mini Goeibatsao and dived into the water. If anyone saw its appearance in the water, they would definitely be shocked. This was because this fellow used its leaves as a paddle. The speed of the entire grass in the water was so fast that only a faint purple light could be seen. In just a few seconds, Goeibatsao had caught up with Yun Chujio's boat. It used the leaves as its claws and climbed up the boat bit by bit. It originally wanted to go to Yun Chujio's side, but there were more than 100 people on the boat. There were too many people and too many eyes, so it was inevitable that it would be discovered. It thought about it and decided to hide in Yun Chujio's hair until it was dark. As for now, it would go to the mast to enjoy the scenery. Thus, she climbed to the top of the mast without anyone noticing. She looked at the endless 10,000-year-old swamp and felt a sense of pride in her heart. As the saying went, once the Goeibatsao appeared, who would be able to compete with it? Yun Chujio felt the emotions of the strange grass in her dantian and curled her lips. Didn't it just attract the attention of the swamp tyrant crocodile? Was there a need to be so cocky? Why did it feel like it was standing at the peak of grass life? When the Guai Chao in her dantian knew what Yun Chujio was thinking, it was so angry that its leaves were twitching. This stupid girl looked down on it. Sooner or later, it would make her cry and worship its dog tail. As time passed, the sky darkened, but everyone's hearts were raised. The 10,000-year-old swamp at night was 100 times scarier than during the day, and danger could come at any time. Even though the night was getting deeper, no one dared to sleep, afraid that once they closed their eyes, they would never have the chance to open them again. Of course, among these people, Hei Shinjio was not included. This fellow fell asleep on the deck, as if this was not the 10,000-year-old swamp that was full of danger, but a normal river ditch. Lan Dimeo glared at Hei Shinjio, who was lying dead on the ground, but he did not say anything. After all, these escapes were all the idea of this troublemaker. If he was willing to sleep, then he would sleep. The Goeibatsao on the mast was about to sneak down and hide in Yun Chujio's hair, but he found that there was a shimmering light in the distance, and it was moving quickly in the direction of the 4 boats of the Chi family. Goei Batsao was puzzled. Was that a school of fish? Chapter 5097 was a joke out of curiosity. Goei Batsao did not get down from the mast. He wanted to see what it was. A moment later, a shrill scream came from the front. Lan Dimeo was shocked and immediately ordered the boat to stop moving forward. He stretched his neck and looked into the distance. However, the night was heavy and he could not see what was in front of him. He could not see, but Goei Batsao could. Firstly, it was standing high up. Secondly, it had good eyesight. One of the Chi family's boats capsized in an instant. The water surface was instantly dyed red with blood. Some people escaped to the other 3 boats, but some people lost their lives. Goei Batsao also saw what the shimmering thing was. It was indeed a large school of fish. As for the shimmering, it was not their scales, but their sharp teeth. It was likely that these strange fish used their teeth to make holes in the boat. After the boat capsized, they would attack the Chi family's people. Goei Batsao immediately felt that things were not looking good. There were many strange fish, and they were all submerged in the water. Even if the Lan family released their spiritual beasts in advance, it might not be of much use. Thinking of this, just as he was about to warn Yun Chujio, he realized that Yun Chujio had already climbed onto the mast. Goei Batsao thought that this stinky girl was indeed alert. However, it was also true. Those people's screams were so shrill. If she did not wake up soon, she would be a pig. However, this stinky girl had turned into a pig demon in the past. She even grew a pig's nose. Ha, what a joke! In order not to be discovered by Yun Chujio, Goei Batsao carefully hid in a tiny crack in the mast while gloating over her misfortune. Yun Chujio climbed to the top of the mast and looked into the distance. Although her eyes were not as sharp as Go Weiba, her brain was sharp. Based on the blurry scene she saw, she could roughly guess what was going on. The situation was a little difficult. Firstly, there were too many strange fish. Secondly, they were attacking the ships. Even the Chi family's swamp ships could not withstand the strange fish, let alone her swamp ships. If she used the previous method, it would not work. The intelligence of these strange fish was not as high as those swamp crocs. Goei Batsao could not attract their full attention. What should she do? Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Goei Batsao took the opportunity when Yun Chujio was not paying attention and finally crawled into Yun Chujio's hair as he wished. This guy thought to himself, looks like this stupid girl has no other way. However, if they sacrificed a portion of their people, they should still be able to escape. However, this stupid girl was usually loud and noisy. In fact, she was the most protective. He reckoned that she would not do this. Lan Dimeo saw that Yun Chujio hadn't come down from the mast, so he couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Little Jio, what's going on?" Only then did Yun Chujio come down from the mast and tell him what she saw and what she guessed. When Lan Dimeo and the others heard this, they immediately turned around anxiously. Those strange fish would probably swim towards them very soon. What would they do then? Lan Dimeo gritted his teeth. If it was really impossible, he could only give up some of the guards. Although he couldn't bear it, he had to do it for the sake of the overall situation. Lan Dimeo lowered his voice and said his thoughts. Yun Chujio frowned. Although she knew that Lan Dimeo and the others didn't treat the guards as equals, this method was too cruel. Seeing Yun Chujio's frown, Lan Dimeo knew that she did not agree with his method. He said, "Unless you have other methods, this is the only method that is not a method." Chapter 5098 Overkill. Yun Chujio had never thought of herself as a good person. However, she was still unable to sacrifice the lives of her companions to protect herself. If these guards were from the Chi family, she would naturally not have any psychological burden. However, these people were all guards of the Lan family. They had passed through the Blood Curse forest together and fought against the demon beasts in the swamp. In a sense, they were comrades in arms. Giving up her comrades was not Yun Chujio's style of doing things. Moreover, if she gave up a part of her people, their fighting strength would be weakened. At that time, if there was an even greater danger, they would be even less able to resist. Therefore, no matter what, she could not give up a part of her people. Seeing that she did not speak, Lan Dimeo thought that she had no objections. He immediately planned to let one of the ships sail to the front to attract the attention of the strange fish. However, Yun Chujio said coldly, "Uncle, please wait a little longer. I will think of a way." Lan Dimeo shook his head. A woman's kindness. How could a person who achieved great things care about these small details? Although it was not a good idea to abandon the guards, it was still better than dying here. At this moment, Lan Luoyen cried out in surprise, because from afar, she could already see a large area of shimmering light approaching them. Lan Dimeo gritted his teeth. "It's too late. We can only do as I say." Yun Chujio clenched her fists. Could it be that there was really no other way? They could only rely on sacrificing a portion of their people in such a sinister way? Lan Dimeo ignored Yun Chujio and immediately ordered one of the ships to sail in front of them, ready to abandon the guards on this ship. Those guards were not fools. They had already guessed a little, but what could they do? They were the guards after all. Their master's orders were heaven, and they had no room to resist. Even if they were unwilling, they could only hope to become a superior person in their next life, no longer a weakling who was at the mercy of others. The strange fish were getting closer and closer, and the guards were getting more and more desperate. At this moment, Yun Chujio's clear voice rang out, "Everyone, don't worry. Our Lan family will never sacrifice our lives to escape. The reason why Third Elder sent your ships to the front is so that we can grasp the situation of the two ships at the front and back." The guards on the ship were skeptical. They felt that Yun Chujio was just saying beautiful words. People were selfish. They didn't believe that she was really that kind. At this moment, Yun Chujio took out a swamp boat and threw a lot of demon beast meat on it. She released Goei Batsao and said to it, "In a while, you will be responsible for using this boat to attract the attention of the strange fish." Goei Batsao, why did all the dirty work belong to her? Goei Batsao was so high and mighty, but it actually let it do such a non-technical thing. It was really overkill. However, the smelly girl was smart. Those strange fish were not intelligent. As long as it was flesh and blood, it was attractive to them. Compared to the guards, the demon beast meat was not a threat, so they naturally chose the ship. Yun Chujio naturally did not know what Goei Batsao was thinking. She continued to say to the crowd, "Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. In a while, I will have my spiritual beasts use this ship to attract the attention of those strange fish. Everyone will release their spiritual beasts at the same time to protect their own ships. Also, arrange a group of people to pay attention to the situation of the ship's deck. Once there is a damaged area, immediately use something to block it. No matter what, we must leave their attack range as soon as possible. Do you understand?" Chapter 5099 deserved it. When the guards saw the swamp ship filled with demon beast meat, they finally believed Yun Chujio's words. But they were not stupid. They knew that this was not Lan Dimeo's original intention. It was Yun Chujio who saved them. The corners of the guards' eyes immediately became moist. What right did they have to be protected by the young miss? They had even laughed at her behind her back before, saying that she was a country bumpkin from a lower continent and could not be compared to the other masters. They were simply not human. They deserved it. At this moment, in the hearts of the guards of the Lan family, Yun Chujio's status instantly surpassed Lan Dimeo and the Lan family. Only such a person was worthy of their loyalty and was worthy of their protection with their lives. Lan Dimeo felt a little uncomfortable, but he couldn't say anything. Moreover, he didn't think that he was wrong. After all, most people would make the same choice as him. Besides, the most important thing now was, would this method of stirring up trouble work? Would those strange fish really follow her instructions and be attracted to that boat? At this moment, the school of fish was already less than 1,000 zhang away from them. Goei Batsao could only reluctantly push the swamp boat loaded with demon beast meat toward the school of fish according to Yun Chujio's instructions. At the same time, the members of the Lan family released their spiritual beasts to protect the swamp boat they were on. Once the strange fish were lured away by the swamp boat, they would quickly sail away. The school of fish smelled the demon beast meat on the swamp boat and immediately pounced toward the swamp boat. Goebatsao had to use its huge leaves to push the swamp boat away in order to lure the school of fish away. Goebatsao felt that it was really not easy. Other people's spiritual beasts only needed to fight and kill, unlike Goebatsao, which not only had to fight and kill, but also had to be responsible for the diversion of the water. Goebatsao was very smart. In order to prevent the school of fish from abandoning the swamp boat, it deliberately rolled up a few pieces of demonic beast meat with its leaves and threw them into the water. In this way, the strange fish tasted the sweetness and were lured further and further away by Goebatsao. At this time, the boat of the land family had already left quickly. Yun Chujio rarely praised, "Go Weiba, I have to say, you are quite smart. You did a good job on this matter. When I have time, I will refine some pills to feed you." The strange grass in the Dantian didn't know how to show off. Although the mission this time didn't bring about a small treasury, it was worth it to make the stinky girl look at it in a new light. Moreover, the small amount of money it had previously kept was enough for it to run around for a few more days. It was both famous and profitable. It was simply wonderful. Although they had temporarily gotten rid of the school of fish, everyone didn't dare to be negligent. They were afraid that if they were a step slower, they would be entangled by the school of fish again. Yun Chujio wasn't too worried. The corner of her mouth curled up slightly. Although there wasn't any problem with the demon beast meat on the swamp boat, the demon beast meat below had been sprinkled with a lot of poison. Under normal circumstances, the demon beasts had a keen sense of smell and would be able to detect the poison. However, those strange fish were greedy and would definitely not be able to detect it when they fought for it. Perhaps, many of them would have already turned into dead fish by now. She had lost a swamp boat, and she had also lost so much demon beast meat. Naturally, she had to teach them a lesson. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, the small silver snake in her sleeve pocket started to struggle violently. Yun Chujio suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart. Fuck. Is the pretty boy going to run away now? Putting aside the fact that it was embarrassing, how would she explain the sudden appearance of a living person? Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 5100 was sour and sweet. Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes and took out another swamp boat. Then she said seriously, "I'm going to change my clothes. You are not allowed to peek." Everyone, are you crazy? What time is it now? You still have the time to change your clothes? Yun Chujio did not care about their reactions. She immediately jumped onto the swamp boat and released Goebatsao, making it stand guard at the bow of the boat. Goebatsao snorted in its heart. Did this wretched girl treat it like a house dog? She was really going too far. However, when it thought about how it could save up a small amount of money again, it was immediately elated. This fellow was afraid that Yun Chujio would discover it when she was changing, so it quickly merged into one to avoid being discovered. Yun Chujio did not know about Go Weiba's small actions. Her attention was now on the small silver snake. After she entered the cabin, she immediately took the small silver snake out and asked with a lecherous look, "Prince Charming, you can change now. Captain ready." The small silver snake's vertical pupils flashed with a hint of confusion. Change into what? Yun Chujio looked at him with a look of understanding. Change into what? Of course, it's a big change. Don't worry, I have integrity. At most, it'll just take a few glances and touch you. I won't do anything to you. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, some images flashed through the mind of a certain venerable. Immediately, the entire snake felt bad. You're shameless. A certain venerable said in embarrassment and anger. It's not like I haven't seen it before. Why are you pretending to be serious? Hurry up. If you don't change, in a while, there will be demonic beasts coming over. Your pot body will be admired by everyone. Yun Chujio said casually. A certain person was so angry that he was twitching. He squeezed out a sentence from the gap between his teeth. Who said that I want to change? If you don't want to change, then why are you tormenting yourself? Hei Shinjio asked in confusion. Di Baiming took a deep breath and said seriously, I feel a huge crisis. You must be careful and not be careless. Hearing that, Yun Chujio put away her casual look and asked, "What crisis? I can't explain it clearly. If the earth chi doesn't spread, we'd better go back the same way," Di Baiming said in a deep voice. Yun Chujio frowned. From the trend, the earth chi will not stop spreading. At this point, her eyes suddenly widened. "Prince Charming, do you think the earth chi is deliberately forcing us into this 10,000-year-old swamp step by step? How is this possible? The earth chi is a natural disaster. How can it be controlled by people?" Di Baiming was silent for a moment before he said, "Perhaps your guess is right. There is always someone better than us. Even if we can't do it, it doesn't mean that others can't do it as well." Yun Chujio thought for a moment. Yes, the mastermind behind the scenes could even wipe out the Celestials. Perhaps he could really control Earth Chi. Who was the person behind it? At this time, Di Baiming said word by word, "Their target is definitely me. If they encounter a very dangerous situation, you will abandon me. This way you can escape." Hearing that, Yun Chujio immediately glared at a certain honored warrior and said through gritted teeth, "What do you mean? Are you planning to abandon me randomly? You white-eyed snake." A certain honored warrior, while he was speechless, a sour and sweet feeling rose in his heart. This ugly girl was really, he thought about it and actually did not know what words to use to describe her. It was just that he now wanted to remember the past even more urgently. He didn't want to miss those memories. "Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Chapter 5101, Goibatsao. Seeing that the little silver snake did not say anything, Hei Shinjio snorted again. "You have lost your memory, not your brain. Don't say those idiotic words again. Do you hear me?" Seeing Yun Chujio's fierce look, not only did the man not feel angry, but he also felt sweet in his heart. He felt that he was most likely crazy. Hei Shinjio saw that the man had become obedient, so she put him back into her sleeve pocket and prepared to return to Lan Dimeo's ship. However, she suddenly remembered something and mumbled in puzzlement, "Pretty boy, didn't you lose your memory? Why do I feel that you haven't forgotten about the fruit sprinting incident?" The silver snake in the sleeve pocket was also stunned. Yes, when he heard Yun Chujio mention it just now, some images appeared in his mind. Could it be that his memory would be restored soon? Yun Chujio muttered a few words and threw the matter to the back of her mind. Anyway, whether the gigolo remembered it or not, it could not escape from her palm, so it did not matter. When she walked out of the cabin, Goei Batsao immediately compared the leaves to heart-shaped cuteness. Yun Chujio remembered that Goei Batsao had performed well recently, so she gave a rare compliment. "Good job, Goei Batsao." Goei Batsao suddenly felt that the whole plant was filled with happiness and pride. This stupid girl finally praised it. It was really not easy. In order to express his excitement, this guy waved his leaves crazily. It was called Goei Batsao. Yun Chujio did not know that this guy would suddenly go crazy. She was about to jump onto Lan Dimeo's boat, but she was hit by Guai Chao's leaves. But after a perfect parabola, Hei Shinjio fell into the water. The worst thing was that there was a bottomless swamp under the water, and this guy fell headfirst. For a moment, Lan Dimeo and the others were stunned. Oh my god! What was that troublemaker doing? Why was he sent flying by his own spiritual beast? Could it be that he wanted to cool down in the water? Lan Luofeng was the first to react and shouted, "Quick! Quickly pull little Jiao up. If it's too late, she'll be dead." Goei Batsao was already scared silly. "It's over. This time, it's completely over. It's dead for sure. That smelly girl definitely won't let it off this time. It was wronged. Didn't it just want to do a Goei Batsao dance? Why did it cause trouble again?" Goei Batsao thought as it jumped into the water. No matter what, it had to save the wretched girl first. Otherwise, it would have nowhere to absorb the power of lightning. However, Goei Batsao did not help, because when it jumped in, Hei Shinjio had already emerged from the water. Fortunately, the water here was deep. She had a water-repellent bead, so she did not sink into the water, so she did not sink into the mud. Even so, Hei Shinjio was still very angry. Seeing the Goebatsao that had already jumped into the water, she was so angry that she went up and beat it up. However, beating it up was useless. Goebatsao was a spiritual beast, so it did not feel any pain at all. Hei Shinjio was so angry that she gritted her teeth and roared at the Guai Chao in her Dannan, Goebatsao, from now on, you will starve. I will not feed you even a single pill. Guai Chao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It decided to quit dancing. It would never dance the Goebatsao dance again. Hei Shinjio was dragged onto the swamp boat by Lan Luofeng and the others. Even though she was thick-skinned, she was still a little embarrassed. No matter who was beaten by her spiritual beast, their mood would not be good. Chapter 5102. The strange aquatic plant's Goebakeo's leaves were drooping. It did not have the courage to board the boat, so it simply pretended to disappear. After shrinking, it lay on the side of the boat and pretended to be dead. Everyone saw that Yun Chujia's face was gloomy. No one dared to provoke her and pretended that they did not see anything. However, everyone thought that this troublemaker had insisted on changing her clothes. Now that she had fallen into the water, wouldn't it be a waste to change her clothes? He would probably have to change his clothes later. Yun Chujio used her spiritual sense to scold Guai Chao until she felt better. After a while, she realized that there was a smell on this guy's body. There was even a piece of aquatic grass hanging from his hair. What the fuck? By the time this guy washed his hair and changed into clean clothes, the sky was already bright. When everyone saw that the sky was bright, they felt more or less relieved. The darkness could easily make people feel fear. Yun Chujio looked towards the shore. She could vaguely see the rising earth chi. It seemed that her judgment was right. This earth chi was forcing them to move towards the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp. What exactly was there? However, they were still at the edge of the 10,000-year-old swamp. It would take them at least 3 days to reach the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp. At noon, they were attacked by another wave of demonic beasts. This time, they had experience. They released their spiritual beasts before the demonic beasts could reach them, so they were not in danger. Just when everyone was slightly relieved, Lan Luoyen pointed to the front and said, "Look, why is the water in front so green? Are they all water plants?" Everyone also saw the green patch in front of them, and they were very puzzled. How could there be such dense aquatic plants? However, even though these aquatic plants were relatively dense, it should not be a problem. After all, the aquatic plants were relatively flexible, and the swamp boat could still row past them. However, they quickly widened their eyes in horror. The boat that was sailing at the front of the Chi family took the lead to enter the aquatic plant area, and then the aquatic plants actually came to life. Actually, this was not quite accurate. In short, the ship was wrapped in the aquatic plants like a green cocoon and dragged into the water. Immediately after, there was a shrill scream, and the surface of the water was instantly dyed red with blood. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Even an idiot would know that there was definitely something wrong with those aquatic plants. Most likely, they were offensive demonic plants. Heavens, with such a large area of demonic plants, not to mention their swamp boats, even if there were dozens or even hundreds of them, they would not be able to cross it. However, these aquatic plants occupied a very large area. One could not see the end of it at a glance. It was basically impossible to go around them. The remaining 3 boats of the Chi family turned around in panic and quickly arrived in front of the Lan family members. The guards of the 3 families were on the ship, but Chi Anqing and the others were fine. Chi Anqing's face was pale. He was obviously scared. If the ship he was on had moved forward a few more feet, he might have been dead by now. Zhuang Ruhai was calmer. He said to Lan Dimeo, "Brother Dimeo, I'm sure you've seen what happened just now. We're in the same boat now. Why don't we work together to get through this difficult situation?" Yun Chujio almost laughed out loud. These people were really thick-skinned, and now they could actually say such hypocritical words. Only eternal benefits, not eternal friends. Such words were most suitable for them. Chapter 5103. Interesting things. Lon Dimeo snorted coldly. Our Lon family's ship isn't as advanced as yours, so it probably won't be of much help. Qi Anqing was about to flare up when Zhuang Ruhai interrupted him. Brother Dimeo, although we weren't happy before, those were just trivial matters. The most important thing now is to think of a way to pass through this area of aquatic plants. The more people there are, the more power there is. If we work together, it will be beneficial to everyone. Lon Dimeo also knew that Zhuang Ruhai was right. Right now, the most important thing for them was to think of a way to pass through this area of aquatic plants. Otherwise, if time passed and the earth qi spread over, there would really be no way to survive. Therefore, Lon Dimeo did not say anything. It was just a tacit agreement that the four families had temporarily formed an alliance. Zhuang Ruhai looked at Mu Kelu again. Brother Mu, your Mu family is good at refining pills. You know more about spiritual plants. What exactly are those aquatic plants? Mu Kelu shook his head. Although these aquatic plants look very ordinary on the outside, they look different from all the aquatic plants recorded in the records. Moreover, it actually has such a terrifying attacking ability. It's really unheard of. The group discussed for a while but couldn't come up with a solution. In the end, they decided to get closer and release their spiritual beasts to test it out. However, the spiritual beasts that were released were dispersed by the aquatic plants before they could do any damage to the aquatic plants. Qi Anqing tried to throw a demonic beast corpse inside. The demonic beast corpse was instantly wrapped into the same green cocoon as before, and then dragged into the water. It was too terrifying. These aquatic plants were like the Grim Reaper. They had no way of passing through. Everyone thought of all the possible solutions, but none of them worked. Fire attack? What kind of joke was this? These aquatic plants grew in the water, so fire couldn't be ignited at all. Spiritual power attack? The effect was very limited, and with such a large patch of aquatic plants, they wouldn't be able to pass through even if they were exhausted to death. Everyone was running around anxiously. If they advanced, they would die. If they retreated, they would also die. Was there really no way to survive? Yun Chujio did not make a sound. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the water plants. She even shamelessly took out a spirit fruit and started munching on it. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Qi Tianhui had always disliked Yun Chujio. When he saw her like this, he snorted coldly and said, Yun Chujio, you actually still have the mood to eat. You really have a big heart. Yun Chujio ignored him. She was just a barking dog. However, Lon Dimeo's heart moved. This troublemaker was full of bad ideas. Could it be that she already had a good idea? Thus, he thickened his skin and asked, Little Gio girl, have you thought of a good idea? Yun Chujio shook her head and denied it. Lon Dimeo could not help but feel a little discouraged. He thought that this troublemaker had thought of a way. It seemed that he had overestimated her. At this time, Yun Chujio said slowly, although I haven't figured out a way, I found something interesting. What is it? Lon Dimeo asked in confusion. Yun Chujio pointed at the water plants and said, if these water plants didn't have any weaknesses, they would have completely occupied the water surface long ago. Therefore, these water plants must have natural enemies, or they must be restricted by something. In addition, you see, the height of these aquatic plants is different. Some of them are obviously much shorter than the others. Moreover, you can see some fractures. They must have been bitten by something. Lon Dimeo was stunned for a moment, and then said with some puzzlement, even if your guess is right, what's the use? It's impossible for these aquatic plants' natural enemies to help us pass through here. Chapter 5104. We're proud. Yun Chujio nodded. Uncle, you're right, but we might be able to find the weakness of these aquatic plants. If my guess is correct, these aquatic plants' natural enemies should appear at night. Well, wait and see after it gets dark. Although Lon Dimeo felt that what Yun Chujio said made sense, he didn't have much hope. However, there was no other way now, so he could only wait until the sky turned dark. Mu Kelu and the others also heard the conversation between the two. Basically, they had the same thoughts as Lon Dimeo, so they were ready to wait and see. Soon night fell. Everyone stared at the water plants, but nothing unusual happened. Chi Tianhui immediately snorted, Yun Chujio, didn't you say that the natural enemies of these water plants would appear? Where are they? Yun Chujio still ignored him and pretended not to hear him. Chi Tianhui thought that Yun Chujio was afraid of him, so he said even more harshly, Yun Chujio, don't think that you're smart and think that you're amazing. You're wrong this time. Yun Chujio yawned and said to Lan Dimeo, Uncle, the prerequisite for cooperation is sincerity. I don't think the three families have any sincerity at all. There's no need for us to cooperate with them. Let's separate from them. Lan Dimeo learned his lesson and immediately nodded in agreement. Okay, let's draw a distance to the side and separate from them. Zhuang Ruhai immediately gave Qi Anqing a slap. Qi Anqing only had to clench his teeth and slap Qi Tianhui. Evil creature! Stop talking nonsense and get into the cabin. Qi Tianhui was stunned by the slap. He never expected Qi Anqing to hit him. He wanted to argue, but he was scared speechless by Qi Anqing's vicious gaze. Qi Anqing naturally did not want to do this, but they had no way to pass through this patch of water. They could only temporarily stabilize the Lan family. After all, Yun Chujio might really find a way to escape. Qi Anqing hypocritically said a few more words of goodwill, urging Lan Dimeo to stay. Lan Dimeo saw that Yun Chujio did not say anything, so he snorted coldly. Alright, in that case, let's stay together for the time being. Qi Anqing and the other two were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Once they left this 10,000-year-old swamp, they had to teach Lan Dimeo a lesson. He really thought they were big-tailed wolves. Rustle, rustle. At this moment, everyone heard a bone-chilling sound and their expressions immediately changed. They realized that the source of the sound was the seaweed. However, due to the thick darkness, they couldn't see clearly what it was that made the sound. Relying on their courage, they drew closer to the boat. Only then did they see countless small black fish in the water. Those small black fish were only an inch long and were chewing on the leaves and stems of the seaweed. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. What was surprising was that the aquatic plants did not resist at all, as if they were no different from ordinary aquatic plants. Just as everyone was engrossed in watching, Yun Chujio said to Qi Anqing, Senior Qi, please send someone to find a way to catch a few small fish. They'll study them. Qi Anqing snorted coldly, Why don't you let your Lan family catch them? Yun Chujio said very naturally, Our Lan family is not as powerful as your Qi family. Our Lan family are all trash. Therefore, those who are capable will have to work hard. Such a good thing will be handed over to your Qi family. The Lan family, yes, we are trash, we are proud. The title of trash was obtained by strength. Whoever snatched it would be anxious. Chapter 5105 Small Black Fish. Qi Anqing wanted to turn hostile, but was stopped by Mu Kelu and Zhuang Ruhai. He could only grit his teeth and command a guard to catch the small black fish with a long net. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. Since these people wanted to take advantage of them, they had to pay the price. Otherwise, why would they be kept? If they were not still useful, why would she acquiesce to Lan Dimeo's temporary alliance with them? Those small black fish should be very weak. The guard did not spend much effort to fish out more than 10 small fish from his net. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Everyone felt that those small black fish were only an inch long and did not have any offensive abilities. Therefore, everyone moved forward without any defenses, wanting to see what was going on. Only the Lan family members did not move forward under Yun Chujio's signal. At this moment, a few screams were heard. It hurt so much. My eyes, my eyes. Hands, my hands. Oh. It's poisonous. Quick, step back, everyone step back. As it turned out, when those people leaned over to look at the small black fish spat out a stream of black liquid from their mouths. Although the amount of the liquid was not much, the corrosive power was very strong. Once it touched the skin, it would instantly corrode the skin. Everyone hurriedly dispersed. The small black fish hopped around in the net for a while. Due to the lack of water, they died very quickly. At this time, Yun Chujio raised her spiritual energy shield and picked up a small black fish with her heavenly silk gloves. Qi Anqing and the others were secretly resentful. This stinky girl must have guessed that there was something wrong with the small black fish, but she did not warn them. She was really cunning. However, they didn't dare to offend Yun Chujio now, so they gritted their teeth and didn't say anything. After Yun Chujio took out a dagger and cut open the little black fish, she found that not only were the little black fish's teeth very sharp, but the roots of their teeth were connected to the poison glands. The black juice was produced from the poison glands. Zhuang Ruhai immediately said, "If that's the case, this black juice should be the key to restraining those aquatic plants. The reason why those aquatic plants didn't resist at all should be because they were restrained by this poison." "That's right, Brother Zhuang's words make sense. It should be the case," Qi Anqing agreed. The others also agreed, thinking that Zhuang Ruhai was right. However, Yun Chujio laughed lightly and said, "You're wrong. This poison is not the nemesis of those aquatic plants, but its nutrients. The aquatic plants provide food to the little black fish, and in exchange, the little black fish provides the poisonous liquid to those aquatic plants." Everyone was in disbelief. They felt that Yun Chujio was talking in her sleep. Why would the water plants want the venom for no reason? Qi Tianhui had received a slap from Qi Anqing because of Yun Chujio during the day. Naturally, he would not let go of this opportunity. He sneered, "Yun Chujio, stop showing off. Do you think this is a competition to see whose story is more interesting? How could those aquatic plants be willing to be eaten by them for the venom of these small fish? What do they want the venom for?" Yun Chujio finally gave him a look of grace, but that look was no different from looking at an idiot. The aquatic plants naturally have a use for the venom. Otherwise, how do you think they digest food? If I remember correctly, after those leaves dragged the demon beast into the water, the demon beast quickly disappeared. Think about the person who was attacked by the black venom. Was his skin corroded instantly? Chapter 5106. What do you have in mind? Yun Chujio continued. Also, don't forget that if the aquatic plants are afraid of the poison, there's no reason for them to not resist. After all, not all the aquatic plants have been eaten by the little black fish. Hearing this, everyone carefully pondered and immediately understood that Yun Chujio's answer was the correct one. They had thought things too simply. Qi Tianhui's face flushed red. Although Yun Chujio did not do anything to him, he wished he could find a hole to hide in. In order to regain his face, he snorted coldly and said, "Even if what you said is right, what's the use of knowing this? We have no way to provide the poisonous liquid to those aquatic plants." Yun Chujio looked at him with even more contempt. "Qi Tianhui, if your brain is not good, don't come out and embarrass yourself. When did I say that I would leave this place by providing the poisonous liquid?" Qi Tianhui was so angry that he almost died. He gritted his teeth and said, "Then what can you do?" Everyone also looked at Yun Chujio. Yes, even if they knew the relationship between the little black fish and the aquatic plants, what could she do to escape? Yun Chujio did not pay attention to the crowd. Instead, she shouted at the aquatic plants, "Quickly open a path, or I will kill all these little black fish. None of them will be left for you. Let's see how you will hunt for food in the future." Those aquatic plants were demonic plants, so they naturally had intelligence. Although they weren't very high, they could still understand Yun Chujio's words. In an instant, those aquatic plants began to shake violently, obviously responding to Yun Chujio's words. They were filled with disdain and anger. "Yo, you don't believe me, do you? Have you seen the medicinal powder in my hand? As long as I sprinkle the medicinal powder into the water, those little black fish will swim over obediently. At that time, we can easily kill thousands of them," Yun Chujio said as she held the medicinal powder in her hand. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." The water plants swayed even more violently. It was obvious that they did not believe Yun Chujio's words. Yun Chujio sneered and immediately sprinkled the powder in her hand into the water. She also signaled for everyone to hold up their spiritual energy shields to prevent them from being hurt by the black fish's venom. Immediately, Over 1,000 small black fish from the water plants swam over to where Yunchujio and the others were. Everyone was stunned. It was really useful? What kind of medicinal powder was this? Beast lure powder? But this was a swamp. How could such a small bag have such great power? Yunchujio shouted, "What are you waiting for? Kill!" Everyone came back to their senses and attacked at the same time. The small black fish quickly turned into dead fish and floated on the surface of the water. Yunchujio placed her hands on her waist and said to the aquatic plants, "Do you see it? If I want to, I can make them extinct, not to mention thousands of them." The leaves of the aquatic plants immediately swayed less violently, as if they were hesitating. Yunchujio raised her voice and said, "What's there to hesitate about? Our meat isn't tasty. Do you have to fight us to the death? I'm not a patient person. I'll count to 10. If you still don't give way, I can only choose to exterminate those small black fishes. Anyway, once they die, the toxins in your bodies will be used up very quickly. Let's perish together. Also, don't have any bad ideas. Prepare to suddenly attack us when we're in the middle. We're not that stupid. We'll advance in batches. Once you break your promise, just wait for the fish to die and the grass to die." 1, 2, 3. Everyone looked at each other, thinking that this was the first time they had met with Yao Ji to negotiate terms. Would this work? Chapter 5107 Prostrating Worship. Just as everyone was drumming their hearts, the aquatic plants actually made a path for them. As demonic plants, the aquatic plants could naturally move around in a small area. Everyone was immediately overjoyed. However, what if these aquatic plants reneged on their promise? Zhuang Ruhai and the other two looked at each other and said, "Brother Dimeo, can we cross our ships? This way, we can avoid being schemed against by these aquatic plants." Lan Dimeo naturally understood what they meant. They were afraid that after the land family's boats passed, they would not care about their lives. However, now that both sides were balancing each other, he could not refuse and immediately nodded in agreement. However, this first boat was undoubtedly the most risky. Who would go first? Yunchujio crossed her arms as she watched. Naturally, the land family would not take the lead. In the end, a guard ship from the other three families took the lead and entered the passage. Everyone's heart was in their throats, afraid that something unexpected would happen. Fortunately, the aquatic plants were obviously afraid of what Yunchujio said and did not do anything. The first ship sailed through safely. Seeing this, everyone felt a little more at ease and immediately passed through the aquatic plants. When Yunchujio's boat passed through, the aquatic plants actually prostrated on the surface of the water, as if humans were kneeling and worshipping. Everyone clicked their tongues in wonder, thinking to themselves, "Not only are ghosts afraid of evildoers, it seems that the aquatic plants are also afraid of evildoers." Hei Shinjio also felt that this was the case and could not help but straighten her back a little. The Goeibatsao on the boat shook its leaves. "Pui. Shameless." They were kneeling before Go-Weiba, all right. Even though it was too weak to look straight at them, it was born with a noble temperament. These water plants were nothing. Soon, all the ships passed through the water plants area. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief. They had finally arrived. Zhuang Ruhai and the other two exchanged a look. Yunchujio's thoughts were more meticulous than all of them. It would not be bad if they formed an alliance with the Lan family temporarily. Thus, Zhuang Ruhai said hypocritically, "It's all thanks to Miss Yun that we managed to escape this time. Thank you very much." Most people would pretend to be modest when they heard such words, but Yunchujio was obviously not an ordinary person. Senior Zhuang is right. This time, it's all thanks to me. Shouldn't you guys express your gratitude? For example, give me a swamp boat or a few 100 million upper-grade spirit stones. Otherwise, if such a situation happens again, TSK, it'll be hard to say. Yunchujio said with a smile. Zhuang Ruhai wished he could slap himself twice. If he had known that this wretched girl was so shameless, he wouldn't have said these words. But since he had already said it, what should he do? Naturally, he couldn't give them the swamp boat. That was something they could use to save their lives. Thus, The three families discussed and gritted their teeth and offered 100 million high-grade spirit stones as a gift of thanks. They thought that since the Lan family would die after leaving the 10,000-year swamp, the money would still belong to them. After receiving 100 million spirit stones, He Xinjiu was in a good mood. She even forgave Guai Chao for his mistake. Alright, the main thing was that Guai Chao had done a meritorious deed just now. Why not forgive him? In your dreams. The medicinal powder that Yun Chujio threw into the water was only a bag of flour. Guai Chao was the one who had attracted the little black fish. Guai Chao saw Yun Chujio's expression and cursed in his heart. Using the grass to move forward, not the grass to move back. This wretched girl was too snobbish. As this fellow thought, he tried to act cute in front of the black-hearted Geo. His subtext was, "Little fairy, give me some pills to eat. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Chapter 5108. Exploring the path in the next 2 days, although they encountered some demonic beasts, it did not cause them too much trouble. Of course, every time they encountered demonic beasts, He Xinjiu and the Lan family only had Yun Chujio's mouth open. The hard work was done by the other three families. Qi Anqing and the others were so angry that they were twitching, but they did not dare to make a scene. After all, if they wanted to safely leave this 10,000-year-old swamp, they still had to place their hopes on Yun Chujio. Mu Zian, Qi Tianhui, and the others were both angry and resentful. They wished they could strangle Yun Chujio to death, but due to the elders of the family, they could only endure it. Moreover, they were very unconvinced. They felt that the elders of the family had overestimated Yun Chujio too much. The matter with the water plants earlier might have been a wild guess. She did not have any ability at all. Yun Chujio loved the feeling of others looking down on her, but not being able to beat her. It was simply a wonderful feeling. Lan Dimeo also felt that his previous frustration had been released. When he saw Lan Luohan and Lan Luoshan, who were mixed in with the Zhuang family's team, he felt that Yun Chujio, this troublemaker, was even more pleasing to the eye. On this day, everyone successfully crossed the outer area of the 10,000-year-old swamp and entered the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp. Everyone's expressions were somewhat solemn. They all knew that the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp was several times scarier than the outer area. The slightest carelessness could cost their lives. Yun Chujio said to Qi Anqing, "Senior Qi, you should still have some spare swamp ships, right? Give us one, and I'll spare 2 swamp ships to scout the way. Of course, you can also take out 2 swamp ships to scout the way without exchanging with us. I don't have any objections." Qi Anqing was furious. Wasn't he the one who was losing out on both sides? However, he had to take it. The Mu family and the Zhuang family might be tied to the Qi family now, but if he didn't agree, they might side with the Lan family. They were originally divided into 4 boats. One of them had been sunk by the aquatic plants, and now there were 3 boats. Many people had died and injured before, and now there were about 700 people. Actually, 2 boats were enough. Therefore, Qi Anqing asked the group to free up a swamp boat and gave it to Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio gathered the Lan family members on a boat. Although it was a little crowded, it had its advantages, so she didn't have to be distracted. Moreover, the Qi family's swamp boat was much better than their boat. Whether it was speed or sturdiness, they were not on the same level. After adjusting, Yun Chujio let out the Goei Batsao again. After a good warning, she called out a swamp boat and let it scout ahead. Goei Batsao was somewhat unwilling. Why did she always let it do such low-tech things? However, this fellow did not dare to resist. After all, it had caused a big disaster previously. It was better to be obedient. Moreover, it was not that there were no benefits. They could save up a small treasury. When Qi Anqing and the others saw that Yun Chujio actually let a spiritual beast steer the swamp boat in front to scout the way, they were completely dumbfounded. Could that Goei Batsao work? Moreover, the spiritual power of the spiritual beast would dissipate once it was exhausted, so this Goei Batsao would not be able to hold on for long. However, it was rare for this stinky girl to be willing to contribute herself. Was this a discovery of conscience? Their question was quickly answered. Yun Chujio said in a clear voice, "I'll have my spiritual beast demonstrate it to you. In a while, the three of you will take turns to send your spiritual beasts to control the swamp boat in front. Of course, if your spiritual beasts are not as smart as mine, then you can send people up. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Chapter 5109 Demonic Beasts Beyond Recognition. Qianqing and the others immediately fed their earlier thoughts to the dogs. They thought that she had found her conscience and was prepared to let her spiritual beast help to explore the way. It turned out that it was just a demonstration. In the end, they were the ones who had to do the hard work. Conscience? This wretched girl didn't have such a thing. Even if she was dissatisfied, she had to do it. Fortunately, they soon discovered that after the swamp boat had been activated, the Goei Batsao only needed to correct the direction of the swamp boat from time to time. It did not have to do anything else. However, there was one thing that the Goei Batsao was very strong. They could not do the same thing with just a few spiritual beasts. They needed at least dozens of them to do it. After discovering this, Qianqing and the others became more fearful of Yun Chujio. With the swamp boat in front of them, they felt a little more confident. This way, even if there was danger, they could still get a warning in advance. It had to be said that Yun Chujio was really full of bad ideas. After traveling for a few hours, there was no danger as expected. On the contrary, it was even calmer than the outer area. Everyone was more or less relieved. Perhaps it was just a rumor. In fact, the depths of the 10,000-year-old swamp was not that dangerous. At this moment, the water in the distance began to bubble as if it was boiling. Everyone wondered, could there be a volcano under the water? Otherwise, why did the water surface seem to be boiling? This was similar to the situation of some hot springs. Someone tested the temperature of the water with his hand and said, the water temperature did not rise. It should not be caused by the high temperature. Then, how did it happen? Zhuang Ruhai looked at Yun Chujio. Why don't we let the swamp boat in front test it out? Yun Chujio frowned. Well, see first. It's better to save if we can. After all, the swamp boat is quite expensive. Zhuang Ruhai, just be stingy. Actually, on one hand, Yun Chujio was indeed stingy. On the other hand, she wanted to observe first. Suddenly, more than 100 water snake-like demon beasts jumped out from the water in front of them. Each of them was as thick as a bucket, and the short ones were more than 10 feet long. They swam quickly toward the boat. They did not swim in the water like fish. Instead, they flew close to the surface of the water as if they were flying. Their speed was extremely fast. Everyone was shocked. What the hell was this? They had never seen such aquatic demonic beasts before, and there were too many of them. The dozens of spiritual beasts on the Pathfinder ship immediately attacked the water snakes at the front. To everyone's surprise, the water snakes looked very strange, but their combat strength was not very strong. Their spiritual beasts easily killed dozens of water snakes. Qi Tianhui snorted coldly and said, "So it only looks scary, but in fact, it is not able to withstand a single blow." As soon as he finished speaking, he was horrified to find that those water snakes that had already died were actually resurrected again. The most fatal thing was that the water snake that was originally cut into 2 pieces had actually turned into 2. The water snakes that were cut into 3 pieces had turned into 3. In other words, the water snakes that were cut into a few pieces would turn into a few pieces. In this way, not only did the number of water snakes not decrease, but they also increased in number, and there was no end to the number of water snakes. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Everyone was instantly terrified. They had never heard of such a demonic beast. Even if the earthworms in the secular world were cut into 2 pieces, not all of them would survive, let alone instantly become 2. The scene in front of them had completely exceeded their understanding. It was simply too terrifying. Chapter 51:10 The nine-headed strange snake. Even old Tua, who had been silent the whole time, had a change in his expression. He thought that he was knowledgeable, but he had never seen or heard of such a demonic beast before. If they continued fighting like this, Not only would they not be able to escape, but they would also cause more and more water snakes to appear. In the end, it would be impossible to stop them. However, they could not attack. The teeth of those water snakes glowed with a blue light. They were definitely poisonous. If they were bitten by them, the consequences would be unimaginable. Mu Kelu said with a trembling voice, "Let's retreat to the periphery. These water snakes shouldn't follow us." Zhuang Ruhai pointed to the distance and said, "The earth qi has already spread over. If we retreat, we will only die." At this moment, Qi Tianhui jumped and shouted, "Yun Chujiu, don't you have the most bad water? Think of a way." "Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Yun Chujiu couldn't be bothered with this idiot. She thought that these water snakes must have a weakness. Otherwise, they would have occupied the entire 10,000-year-old swamp. Yun Chujiu observed for a while and found that not all water snakes could be resurrected after death. Those whose bodies were broken could be resurrected, but those whose heads were broken were completely dead. Seeing this, she quickly reminded everyone, "Blow their heads off. Blow their heads off. Attack the heads of those water snakes. Once their heads are broken, they can't be revived." At the same time, some people also realized this. Everyone immediately focused their attacks on the heads of those water snakes. Sure enough, it worked. Once their heads were broken, those water snakes would die completely. Seeing that the number of water snakes was decreasing, everyone relaxed a little. Just when everyone felt that they could breathe a sigh of relief, the surface of the water in front of them began to churn violently again. The water splashes that rose up were several zhang high. Everyone immediately had a bad premonition. Before they had the time to react, they saw a giant snake with 9 heads reveal itself. Only the upper half of the giant snake was above the water surface. Even so, it was still very huge, similar to a hill. The 9 heads groaned like babies. They lowered their heads and inhaled. Both the living water snakes and the corpses of the water snakes were swallowed by it. If it were not for the spiritual energy barrier that everyone had erected, and there were so many of them, they would have been swallowed by it as well. At this moment, Mu Kelu cried out in surprise, "I remember now. This is the 9 neonate. The ancient vicious beast 9 neonate. 9 neonate." When everyone heard that the monster in front of them was the ancient vicious beast 9 neonate, their legs immediately went weak. This time, they really couldn't live. What kind of terrifying existence was the ancient vicious beast? No matter what, they wouldn't be its match. Yun Chujiu narrowed her eyes. 9 neonate? She didn't believe it. Regardless of whether it was the ancient vicious beast or the divine beast, they all ended up in a miserable state. When she met them, they were basically in the remnant soul state. There was no reason for this 9 neonate to still be alive. Moreover, if it really was the 9 neonate, would there be such a waste of time? They would probably have eaten them long ago. At this moment, Buttface, who was in the spirit beast bag, said, "Little fairy, don't listen to that old bastard's nonsense. This isn't the 9 neonate at all. The 9 neonate's level isn't comparable to the 4 great fierce beasts, and it still wants to be a demon. Later, it was eaten by Tao Tai, so this thing definitely isn't the 9 neonate." "Then what kind of demon beast is it?" Yun Chujiu asked. Dog 2 glanced at Peach Blossom, who was flirting with the little dragon, and said, "It's hard to say. It might have some 9 neonates bloodline, just like Peach Blossom's infatuated dog. Although it has the bloodline of the Shao Tianquan, it's not the Shao Tianquan." Chapter 5111. It's not a 9 neonate. Yun Chujiu's mouth twitched when she heard Buttface's words. It's already so late, but it's still jealous. That's enough. Yun Chujiu couldn't be bothered with it. She said to the terrified crowd, "Although it looks like a 9 neonate, it can't be a 9 neonate. You're all stupid and idealistic. If it really was a 9 neonate, it would have left this 10,000-year-old swamp to gloat. Why would it stay here? Moreover, if it was the 9-headed snake, it would have eaten us already. Why would it shout and scare us?" Hearing that, everyone felt that what Yun Chujiu said made sense. Their fear dissipated a little. As long as it wasn't the 9-headed beast, they at least had a chance of survival. At this moment, the 9-headed snake spat out 9 huge water balls and threw them at the 3 ships. The 9-headed snake's goal was not to use the water balls to kill people, but to overturn the swamp ship. As long as the swamp ship overturned, everyone would be like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The swamp ship was violently shaken by the huge water balls. Mu Kelu and the others were on the ship that was almost overturned. They were so scared that they cried out in alarm. "What are you screaming for? It's throwing water balls, can't you use spiritual beasts to intercept it halfway? A bunch of idiots." Yun Chujio shouted in annoyance. "Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Everyone didn't have the time to argue with her now. When the water ball was about to hit them again, they were stopped by the spiritual beasts and changed their direction. The 9-headed strange snake saw that this move wasn't effective, so it directly swam towards everyone. Everyone subconsciously wanted to escape, but they also knew that even if there wasn't any threat from the earth chi behind them, they wouldn't be able to escape even if the 9-headed strange snake was so fast. Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and said, "Throw all the boats or floating things on your bodies to the surface of the water. Use those things as support points. Kill it if it's not dead, then we will die. Fight." Everyone did not have time to think and immediately followed Yun Chujio's instructions. They threw all the boats and wooden boards to the surface of the water. Their movement techniques were light and agile. As long as they had a support point, they could rely on their spiritual power for a short period of time. At this time, the 9-headed snake had already arrived in front of them. Its 9 heads shot countless water arrows at them. The water arrows were still glowing with blue light. It was obvious that they were poisonous. Lan Dimeo and the others used the scattered support points to tangle with the 9-headed snake. Yun Chujio knew that she was a piece of trash, so she did not go forward. Instead, she jumped and cursed, "You 9-headed snake! You are so shameless you actually spat. Do you think you're a 9-headed infant? You didn't even look in the mirror, it was simply disgusting. You opened the door to disgust me, it's so disgusting. Those little snakes are all your descendants, right? This is the first time I've seen you so shameless, you actually ate your own descendants." When the 9-headed snake heard Yun Chujio's curses, one of its heads immediately turned towards her and shot a few water arrows at her. When Elder Tua saw that the head's attention was on Yun Chujio, he immediately slapped the head. Elder Tua's cultivation was quite high. The sharp palm wind directly smashed one of the heads into pieces. The 9-headed snake let out a shrill scream. Everyone could not help but be overjoyed. It turned out that this 9-headed strange snake was not particularly powerful. As long as they worked together, they would be able to kill it very quickly. However, almost in an instant, the 9-headed strange snake grew a new head and let out a proud cry. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.